Today we are making fish soup. I'm going to be making it with sea bass, but you can do it with several other fish. It's your choice. So I have 2 sea bass here that I have filleted, and I kept the bones and the heads, and I removed the eyes from the heads. And you want to cover that with cold water. You can use other fish. You can use snapper, you can use trout, basically any fish that you want. I covered it with cold water and I put in 1 whole onion, and I'm going to cook this for probably 45 minutes until the cartilage and bones become soft, and I'll show you the next step. I just want to add that if you don't know how to cut up a fish, you can have your fishmonger fillet the fish, and you just want to keep the bones and the heads, and you'll bring them home and cook them separately. Now that your broth is ready, when the bones really fall apart very easily, and you're going to strain it through a fine strainer, and you're going to discard these bones and this onion, and you're going to be left with a beautiful clear broth, and then I'll show you the next step. While the fish cooks, you want to start by frying your onions. You want to get them to a little bit kind of golden like I did here. The amount, it's up to you. I have 1 large and 1 small onion for the amount of soup that I'm making. And then I have 3 small carrots and 3 large ribs of celery. So once the onions are kind of golden, you want to add your carrots and your celery. Now, there are many different recipes for this fish soup, and some purists would say you only add onions, no carrots, no celery, but I'm going to add carrots and celery. And I'm going to cook this until the veggies are soft, and then I'll show you the next step. Now, ideally, you would wait for the fish broth to cool, and then you would do what I'm doing now. But I don't have time to be waiting for the fish soup to cool, so I took some potatoes that I cut into these kind of pieces. This is the traditional way, into these long kind of quarters, I guess. You could use larger potatoes, and you just cut them into these long pieces. If you want, you could cube it. It doesn't really matter, but this is the traditional way of cutting the potato. And what I did was I just covered it with some cold water. The reason for this is if I were to put the potatoes in the hot broth, they would kind of stay tough. They wouldn't really soften up like I like them to. So I'm going to start cooking this, and once this boils, I can add the broth. And then I'll show you the next step. So my potatoes came to a boil, and I added the stock. And now as you cook it, you're going to get a little foam, so you just use a skimmer to remove the foam. And the potatoes are going to take about 15 to 20 minutes, so about 5 minutes before they're done, I'm going to add my fish. Right after I added my broth, I also added my carrot, celery, and onion mixture. I'm also going to add some whole black peppercorns. I probably have a good tablespoon, maybe a little bit more. If you don't want to have the peppercorns swimming around in your soup, you can put them in a cheesecloth and then remove that before serving. For the fish, I simply cut it into little pieces like this, with the skin and everything. And you can use different kinds of fish. You can use combinations of different fish. So I have 2 small sea bass here, and I'm going to add them to the potatoes once the potatoes are 5 minutes away from being done. Okay guys, full disclosure here, I lost a pretty large chunk of my video. I don't know where it went. I don't want to remake the whole pot of soup, but I do want to give you guys the recipe, so I'm just going to do this so that you have a visual for those of you who need it. So let's pretend that you saw me put the fish in the stock 5 minutes before it was ready. And then I added capers. Now, this is not traditional, but I just decided to do something a little bit different. If you want to go the traditional route, do not add the capers or the olives, but you absolutely need to add bay leaves. I have about 5 here, 5 minutes before your soup is ready. Now, I drained and rinsed about a 1/4 cup of capers, about a 1/2 cup of pitted Kalamata olives, and here I have herbs, which I add at the very end. When the soup is ready, I turn it off, and then I add fresh herbs. I have cilantro, parsley, and dill. You can add any one of these herbs. I wouldn't skip them. I love to put fresh herbs in my soup, and I recommend that you do as well. And when you serve it with a slice of lemon and some more fresh herbs if you like, and that's it. Here it is, our fish soup. I hope you enjoy.